All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Geek Culture and Philosophy Podcast. My name is Mike,
And my name's RC.
and this is our first episode of the podcast. We're starting together. We want to be able to, on this podcast, we want to talk about uh, all of our geek stuff that we're into, but also political and philosophical topics that we're both interested in and want to get it out to the public. Do you want to say anything about it, RC?
Yeah, just going off of the politics thing, just basically commentaries on the culture and the society that we are living in as it pertains to everyday life and what you see in your everyday life.
Yeah, like not just stuff in the United States. I want to cover stuff that happens in like Europe, especially because I feel like Europe's a very is a really cool, unique case of cultures clashing right now, and how modern culture is coming together from that. I
Yes,
want to talk about that.
absolutely, absolutely.
Right.
Clashing is a good word.
Yeah, clashing is a very good word, I think. But anyway, since we're going to start with the geek side, I want to talk about, or we want to talk about the story in Magic the Gathering. Something that's going to come up a lot because we're both really into Magic the Gathering,
Mm-hmm.
and the direction they're taking it, and how we both don't see it quite the way that Wizards wants us to see it. I think RC,
No,
right?
it's not the way it used to be. Actually, before we get into the first topic, since this is the first episode, do you want to give any sort of like background information about yourself, or just any like little?
Oh, I guess we could do that. Yeah, that sounds cool. So I'm in my mid 20s. I'm pretty much a geek nerd. I'm from the from we'll say the Philadelphia area, and I'm really into most things. I love politics, history, philosophy, all things geek, and also sports. I know a lot of people don't like sports in this community, but I'm a big fan of it. So there's that.
And I'm not against sports. I'm just not really well versed on them. So
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, I'm willing to. I could add my 2 cents, but I come from very limited knowledge.
Oh, okay. Uh, I guess what's your background, RC, and what do you want to get out of the podcast?
Well, my background is well, I'm in my early 30s, and I'm probably from the greater Philadelphia area, on the outskirts of it. And I've lived on the East Coast my entire life. And although you're from the East Coast, you're currently somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm
And,
currently not in the East Coast.
but we both have like that East Coast mentality, I think, to some degree, which is kind of cool. I have like a science background. When I was younger, I was more into like art and that sort of stuff. And I've been into games pretty much my whole life. So what the things we're going to talk about are very things that I take seriously, and I always like to keep an eye on what's going on in the gaming world, in the Magic world, and yeah. And what I hope to gain out of it is just maybe some more interesting like thoughts. I'd like to think about things in a little different way, and hopefully get some listener feedback at some point.
Oh yeah, of course.
See how this stuff is received.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for as well. So do you want to go into the discussion about the Magic story, or are we
Sure.
good now?
Yeah,
No,
sure.
no, I'm not. I don't want to rush things. So if we want to talk about other stuff,
No, I just thought
okay.
for the first episode it'd be good to have like introductions, but
No, yeah, you're totally right. I totally missed that. But all right. So we were having a discussion last night, RC, about what they're doing with like the characters and storylines in like recent, as opposed to what the story used to be, right?
yes,
Um, and it seems like there seems to be an agenda being pushed in the Magic storyline.
yes,
Um, that their main character, at least of Ixalan block, is Jace, and he seems to just be totally like subservient to Vraska in this, or because he's lost his memory, right?
yeah,
And he's just like, "Oh, Captain Vraska, we do whatever you want to do," and the cards show this as well, where Jace is always in a vulnerable position. Jace is always it's not as important, and even in like on his card art, he's just doesn't look very, how would you say it, RC? He doesn't look very like manly or
He, to whatever extent that he was masculine, which I'm never saying, I'm not going to say he was ever like overtly effeminate.
Yeah, that is true. He was never that masculine to begin with, but yeah.
But I think whatever he looks like now is kind of like a step back from whatever masculinity he once had. And from what I've heard is they kind of designed Jace with the typical quote unquote Magic player in mind. A young guy who's not like all like bulked up like a football player and that sort of thing, and he really likes using his mind and he's curious and that sort of stuff. They seem to think that that's like their number one psychographic who plays Magic the Gathering, which I understand. But it seems like they've kind of like made him look a little more boyish or something. Like he's kind of been made not as masculine as he once looked, even though it was never that much to begin with. Like I said,
yeah, it's like they keep making Jace younger instead of older. It seems.
Yeah.
But like, and that's not even the real problem. It's not like it's a. The thing is I don't want to phrase these things as a problem. It's more like it's their choice. I just think it's a bad choice, right? Like it just doesn't. I don't think it's conducive to good storytelling. To like not have a realistic protagonist, because like I don't see like a very powerful wizard being the kind of person that Jace is, at least the way he is now. You know what I mean? Because Jace is portrayed as like one of the most powerful mind mages in the entire like multiverse, right? But he's also
he's like maybe 20 years old too, which is kind of strange.
Yeah, he's barely an adult, really, and he just keeps getting younger instead of older, because Jace has been around since Lorwyn, obviously, and it's been forever, and he's still figuring things out. And I know they want a narrative and they want to tell a story, but I just don't think it's a very good story, especially just like I don't even want to focus on the main characters. Like I know you talk about RC, just like the arts on the cards, like how just like all the people in positions of authority, at least for like the pirates, are all women.
Yes, which goes against like everything that you know about pirates. It's a very male-centric profession or role, and I mean, if they wanted to do this with some other sort of, I mean, I guess they've done it with other very male-centric roles too, like knights. There's been a lot of knights in Magic's artwork that they're all women now, which is really weird. But pirates, everybody associates that with like it's a ship full of dudes. There's no women on board, and now it's like we're seeing 50-50 female-male crews, and they act like that's going to be totally believable. I think part of the reason that pirates historically were all male are because if you have women on board, it causes a lot of problems.
Yeah, it does cause a lot of problems, like historically, and just like the idea of like, I always find it silly, the whole idea of men fighting women in like just a regular, just like in a regular, like I can get it. So like when you go to superheroes, right? If a woman has like a Wonder Woman has superpowers, like she's super strong and super everything, like it makes sense that she can beat up like a lot of people because she's not human, right? But like when you just have a regular human woman going up against a regular human guy, like even like the example I always want to bring up is like there's like they did this like thing. It was a video of like the best arm wrestling, like the world championship arm wrestler who was a woman, like the woman's arm wrestling, and she just went into a bar where there's just like regular Joe Schmo guys, and they all destroyed her, like every single one of them. It's like like it's just they're biologically different. So it's hard for me to separate that because, like, you can see, like, at least, like, if you look at, like, the Marvel movies, right, like Black Widow or whatever, she always does those, like, really fancy, like, acrobatic moves to, like, it looks like she's, using their weight against them to, like, fight,
Okay. And she's also very, like, a highly trained spy.
Assassin,
So that in that case, like, I'm willing to buy it, but like they'd never put her against like somebody like the Hulk or Thor or something like that because they know that's like insane.
Yeah,
but
no,
she take down like these low-level peon guys if she sneaks up on them and that sort of thing, which is a believable way of a woman being able to overpower a man, is like through the element of surprise and quickly disabling him before he knows what's going on.
Exactly. Yes, I totally understand it, and it's just, and my problem is like in a sword fight between a man and a woman, in a fair fight, the woman just would almost never win because he can just overpower her. Like he can like her
Yeah,
his swings are gonna be uh 10 times harder than hers, like, or at least 3 times harder than hers. Like,
yeah, yeah. And his arms are longer too, so he has
is the
a longer sweep with his
yeah.
blade. He's just going to be a better combatant.
Yes. And it doesn't make any sense to me that, like, and there's the other thing I don't understand. Like, pirates are like historically, like, yeah, sometimes they're seen as heroes, but a lot of times they're just seen as like murderous thieves, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like, is that like a good thing? Like, if the whole point is to make women more prominent, like, do you want them to be the role of like the murderous thief? I don't understand.
I
Uh,
don't know. I don't know. In the vampires also on Ixalan, it seems like a lot of the more powerful. If you look at the vampires on Ixalan, there's like this. I guess they're modeled after conquistadors.
yeah.
And there's like the soldier characters, and then there's like the priestly class. And a lot of the ones in the priestly class, which I guess are just the most powerful ones by themselves because they're like blessed by God or whatever. A lot of those are women too, so they've given females the more powerful role in the vampire society as well.
Yeah, and just like the whole, I just don't like the like you say you want like the standards to be like equal or whatever, but the standards aren't equal. Like I think, as we were talking about this last night with like the pirates specifically, whenever you see men on the pirate cards doing stuff, a lot of times they have their shirts off or they're like that kind of stuff because it's hot. Like a lot of pirates would have their shirts off because
Yeah,
it's like 100 degrees outside and and they're on the open water, right? There's no shade,
right.
So like, but women are dressed in niqabs apparently. Like they're just in these like giant dresses that one would impair their movement and two uh like would give them heat stroke,
Right,
and
right.
like I just like, because there's like this whole, it's in all media too, where like women aren't allowed to be sexy anymore because if they're sexy then they're somehow uh objects of men at that point. But like I don't understand, like most women that I know like want to feel sexy. Like that's a goal that they want to achieve,
I
right?
mean,
So I don't
honestly, doesn't everybody want to feel sexy?
well, no,
Like,
yeah, everyone wants to
guys
feel
want to feel
sexy. I
sexy
agree,
too.
but no, you're 100% right. But like, I just mean like, no, actually no. That is the way we should see it because everyone wants to feel sexy. So I don't understand
So
why
why
there's a
take that
difference.
away from women?
Yeah, why you take that away from women? Oh, just because there's evil men out there who are gonna look at them and. I mean, if you're a man and you're getting your kicks by looking at a sexy magic card, then I don't know, like just go somewhere else. Like I've never
Well,
met
also, you're not harming anybody by looking at a magic card, so who gives a shit?
exactly. Like I don't understand. Like it's art. Like you know, why would anybody care? Um,
Yeah,
and then I guess it's hard to like pull the same standards on like I actually like the design of the merfolk in this set where they're like instead of they're like tropical fish instead of just like a regular fish,
yeah,
to be
that is
like
pretty
the
cool. Yeah.
and I actually like the dinosaurs too.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, the dinosaurs specifically, not the people who are like the part of the empire or whatever,
Yeah.
because those that one also is dumb. Uh,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
like oh, there's like it's like you're in a scene from like the religious museum where they like show like the person riding the dinosaur. Like I'm like okay. That's all it reminds me of when I see someone riding a dinosaur on a magic card. That's what it reminds me of. But
Yeah.
that might just be me. Of course, this is all just our own opinions, but
Yeah. I think it can be said that Ixalan block is a very strange block. It's a weird world where they've matched up a lot of things that are, I don't know, I guess interesting in the real world, but when they put like the magic spin on it, it seems very strange. I mean, like it is cool that they finally did a dinosaur set. I was kind of hoping for them to do like a prehistoric world dinosaur set first, but then they decided to go with this Mesoamerican thing, and it's, I don't know, it was something I wasn't expecting.
do you think any of the like the fact that the like I know that they design years in advance,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
do you think that like they when they leaked the picture, like the art on the packs for this set, and the name of the set was different, and they changed the name, like I think it was called like
It's like Atlazan or something like that.
yeah, Atlazan, and now it's then they changed it to Ixalan. Uh, do you think any of that had an effect on what the set was going to be, like story wise, or do you think that like it didn't change at all?
I don't. Well, from what I heard, one of the reasons they changed the name was there was another property, another intellectual property that had something like that that was very similarly named, and they didn't want to be confused with that. I heard that, and I also heard that in testing, just in people hearing the name, they thought of like the lost city of Atlantis, and they didn't want people to make those connections for whatever reason.
Okay, because that's what the early speculation on the set was when those got leaked, was that it was going to be an Atlantis set, because the picture was like of a merfolk too, you know.
That would have been cool. I mean, maybe they'll do that one day, but I don't know. When I see ZAN, when I see an ending ZAN on a word, I do kind of think Mesoamerican.
Yeah. It's not really in mind the Mesoamerican setting. Like I think that's cool. Though like why they did like dinosaurs instead, because the Mesoamerican have their like own like they have like the Quetzalcoatlus and stuff.
Yes, yeah.
And I think they actually have some stuff that's themed like that in the set as well. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I would have liked that as like a race of like lizards, instead of just like the classic dinosaurs, right? Like I don't know.
Yeah, maybe like some Nagas or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they've been doing Nagas a lot recently because they did them in Tarkir, and then they did them again in Amonkhet.
Yeah, they did do them again in Amonkhet. Yeah, you're right.
But to me, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Like I think my problem is like the sets are pretty awful. Like I think this Ixalan set, like, because I think they knew that they were like going away from the block structure again to restructure it again. Mm-hmm. And I think that this was just like hastily put together. Like, what can we put in? Dinosaurs, merfolk, just like let's just throw it, because they have like, I think the standard bandings show that, and the just the poor sales. I would assume sales are. I mean, I guess I don't have proof, but I can assume sales are down, mostly because of the card stock quality being so bad. I don't know if you've run into this problem. Like,
yes, I've opened up a card or two or a pack or two where some of the cards have been like nicked on the sides.
Yeah, well, mine just come out bent, like out of the package. Like they're like not like a curl. Like, you know how foils would curl?
Yes, yeah. Okay.
Every card does that for me now.
Even non-foils?
Even non-foils, the commons, uncommons, rares, every single card. Like, maybe not out of the pack sometimes, but it'll like, you leave them there for like an hour, come back, they're all like curled, every single one.
Jeez. Okay.
And I live in a zero humidity environment. There's no humidity at all, so you can't really blame. It's not like I'm at the beach or whatever, and there's like all this like water in the air. Like, there's like literally zero humidity where I live, and so it's hard for me to justify buying. Like, I used to, like, even if I didn't like the set, I would always buy like a fat pack of every set,
right?
You know, just to have it. You know, but now I can't even justify doing it. Like, the last one I bought was an Amonkhet fat pack. I have that here, and the cards are just junk. They're just junk. Like, and you can't. You can return them, but who wants to do that? You know.
Yeah. Do you have any of the double-faced cards from original Ixalan, not Rivals of Ixalan, but Ixalan?
I do not. I don't think I don't think I bought much Ixalan. I think I might have gotten like a pack somewhere.
Okay.
I think I stopped. That's when I like stopped buying Magic cards. Like, I'm just done buying them until like it gets fixed and like Standard's fun again. Which might be never.
It could be. I mean, they don't seem to be letting up.
Did you see that they put out something about the card stock quality on like a website? It was like one of those, like, basically a blog is what it was. It was like the head of WotC, I forget his name. Basically, he made the statement that like they were like, oh, we're gonna ask him about card stock quality, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sure this is gonna go well. And basically he said he was like, oh, a lot of times you can choose between fast and cheap and good, but we want both. And that's all he said. So to me, that's very fairly obvious that they chose fast and cheap and not good. And this is a direct consequence. And other people have spoken about this, Alpha Investments and Unsleeved Media.
Yeah, I watched
Jeremy
those guys' videos.
Yeah. They both talked about how if they actually acknowledge that there is a problem, that opens them up to a lawsuit. That's why they're not talking about it. Or at least that's the theory. Because if they acknowledge, yes, there's a problem with cardstock quality, that means for over 3 years they were selling defunct product.
Yes, I've heard that theory. Yeah.
Yeah, and that if someone could get a class action lawsuit together for, could you imagine how many millions of dollars in like Magic card sales they would have to refund? Yeah. You know, like it would ruin the company. It would end Magic, I think, honestly, that kind of lawsuit. So I think that, honestly, the way Rudy portrays it's funny. He's just like, they're just freaking out, man. They're just like, he's just like jumping up around the video. I think is funny.
He claims he knows all these like inside people, which is kind of cool because I guess they're giving him like the inside scoop on what's going on in the company and at distribution channels and things like that. At one time, I mean, he said recently that he's no longer able to get that data, but he like very recently he was able to figure out like what the print run sizes were on all these sets, so you could actually determine how many copies of a certain card were out there and that sort of thing, which. If you know the demand, you can basically understand what the true cost of the card is or what the true value of it is.
Yeah, that's
also. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, it's crazy that you know exactly how many that like fixes the secondary market almost. You know.
Yeah. I mean, something very devious that he Jeremy Hambley pointed this out from Unsleeved Media, that there are I guess they're called rares on the A track and rares on the B track, and one of them appears is like actually more common than the other one. So they actually know which rares are the crappy junk rares, and there's actually more of those in existence. So the 4 rarity levels that we all think exist, common, uncommon, rare, and mythic rare, there's actually like an additional rarity kind of like thrown in there, somewhere between rare and mythic rare, where like the good rares lie, and there's no way to tell that from looking at a card. Like unless you know it's a good card or a bad card.
Yeah, like honestly, I suspected that just as a player for so long, you know, that like I feel like even in Return to Ravnica, like I feel like I'd always open up I don't know, what was it, junk rare. Was Conjured Currency in Return of Ravnica? I know it was in the block. I don't know if it was in the set, but something like that. You just open up that one like 80 times before you get in like an Abrupt Decay, you know, like the one you actually wanted, you know. I was just like, really, like, is there really the same amount of Conjured Currencies as there are to Abrupt Decays? Are you like, is this what we're pretending?
I always thought there were. Like, I always thought all the rares came off of one sheet, so they all had the same distribution.
Yeah, that's what they wanted you to think. But then, like in practice, like I would go to drafts. Like back when I was like heavy into Magic, I would draft like 3 times a week. You know,
right?
Like, I knew what cards were more common than others. You know, like I knew that there were some rares you were going to see more often than others, but no one could like prove it. But apparently, they proved it. You know, and I think that's you know. I don't know how far back they've been doing that, or if they've done that forever. Like, it's hard to know, I guess. Because, like, I would like to know, like, were they doing that Innistrad block? Did I have the same chance of opening up a isolated chapel as I did Snapcaster Mage? I don't know.
I don't know either. But when I think about all the times I've opened sealed Magic product, the amount of times that I've been happy about what I've opened is like probably less than 25%. So maybe they were doing that.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think Magic's in real trouble. And I think you're going to hear me say that a lot on this podcast if we talk about Magic.
Yes, the secret theme of this podcast is doom and gloom. You will slowly
Yeah. It's just the world is falling apart. The Magic world, at least, maybe the real world too. But
well, we're gonna save some money in the product process. Excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like a perfect combination, right? Is in that the sets are garbage. Like there's not a lot of good cards in them, and they're not fun to play for the
Mm-hmm.
most part. At least from what I've seen, like people aren't talking about these sets. Like even like or as like Tarkir was more fun. I think like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
then like
yeah.
Almond. Like I haven't heard anybody be like, "Oh, I love Amonkhet or Ixalan." I haven't heard one person on like a forum or like there's just not fun sets.
Oh man,
Um,
Amonkhet was like a set that like I wanted to like so badly because I love the ancient Egypt thing, and I know that they've been avoiding the ancient Egypt thing because I guess that's how Yu-Gi-Oh started out. I never played Yu-Gi-Oh, but apparently there's a lot of ancient Egypt stuff in that, and Wizards did not want to look like they were just hopping on the bandwagon and like copying Yu-Gi-Oh, so they held off on this ancient Egypt stuff for a long time. But I always thought that like, hey, one day they're going to do an ancient Egypt set and it's going to be really cool. And I don't know, I was going through like kind of a stressful time at work at the same time, and so I was kind of relieving some of that stress by going and buying Amonkhet bundles at Walmart during the
sure.
time. And I kept wanting there to be good stuff, and because like, this is ancient Egypt, it's cool, but the cards just aren't good. Like I'd look at the pile of cards I accumulated, and it's just like nothing there I really wanted. And I mean, Nicol Bolas is cool and Ancient Egypt's cool, but the way the set was like carried out, it just wasn't very good, and there was a lot of weak cards in there.
When you were buying those, did you ever open up any of those masterpiece things?
Yeah, I got the yeah. It wasn't a super good one. It was Mind Twist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
I didn't like the way those looked. I mean, I get they're expensive and you want to open them if you do open an Amonkhet pack, but so the aesthetically, like I think they really like what's a good phrase for this? Like they went too early on the thing. Like they went too hard and fast with them because the best ones are still to me like the Zendikar ones, like the fetch lands and the shock lands. Those are beautiful,
yeah.
But I'm not a big fan of the Amonkhet ones. I'm not a big fan of the Kaladesh ones. Oh man, I forgot about Kaladesh. What an awful. Like not even just like because you could say the other ones are just low powered and not cool cards.
Yeah,
I will defend. Like I'm not a game designer,
yeah.
but I think that's what makes this opinion even stronger. I think Kaladesh is the worst designed Magic set in the history of Magic. Like I think I'd rather draft Fallen Empires, honestly.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's just like energy was just the biggest. Like it was just like this brainchild of Mark Rosewater that should never have seen print, but just because he wanted it to see print, it got to see print. He pulled it out of his driveway, and
As he so often does.
Yeah.
The theme with him is, I mean, I know he's created a lot of hits, but the theme with him is it just seems like he gets something in his mind, and he's just going to keep picking and picking and picking until he gets his way, and it always happens eventually. That he'll always get his way, and not all of his choices are home runs.
Yeah, I think energy was the least fun mechanic since Infect, and I still think Infect is a more fun thing to play around than energy, because at least they made an anti-infect card, like they made Malira, but there's no like exhaust the energy card. There's no like, oh, your opponent loses, like, and it just made standards like not only they had the band Aetherworks Marvel, which was like the combo version of energy, and they were like, fine, we just have all these energy cards that are just great mid-range cards, and then they had to ban those, like it's just dumb. Like I feel like, and then like they were like, oh, we're gonna make power. Like I think they heard the criticism that they were gonna get there was power, like they were fighting power creep and the cards were gonna be weaker, and then they just end up having the ban cards in standard because they just make broken cards like Smuggler's Copter,
Right.
Like,
right. Yeah, it's I don't know what they're thinking.
I think I know what they're thinking. I think they're overworked because they have all these sets to put out. Like they put out like including the master sets and like unhinged or unscrewed or whatever it's called. They put out like 7 sets this year.
I haven't counted, but I know they're making more. They're releasing more sets now than they did like 5 years ago.
Yeah, to me, I just like I hope they get over this because I want them to like go back to other like I want to see other sets made, but it has to be in a good way. Like I just
Hmm.
like you could
Yeah.
definitely see that they did a push for like the Christmas, you know, thing. Like they released like what like three like they released the iconic masters, the
Hmm.
Ixalan set, and the on what's it called the
Unstable. Yeah.
unstable in all during like between like October and November or October and
Yeah.
December.
Yeah.
Uh, just to be like, oh, look how much money we made from all these products. And I'm like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, whoa. And I'm like, I would suspect that this quarter one, for them, like January through like March or April or whatever, uh, is just going to be like the worst quarter for Magic because everyone's just going to be burnt out on it. Like, I feel bad for uh, whatever they're trying to do. And then there's like another Masters set about to come out. Like they're
Right.
already spoiling cards for like what's it called? Like Masters 25 or something, right?
Yeah. Masters 25. Yeah.
Just
And
like oh, we put
they've spoiled 3 cards so far. They all look good, but as with all of these recent master sets have shown, they try to stretch out the value and like the good cards, and they sprinkle in these like crap cards along the way. And I mean, buying a booster pack for what is it like somewhere between $7 and $9? Yeah, $10 even. Uh, you're like you're taking a gamble because I mean you might get like a $1 or $1.50 rare, or you could get the $60 rare that you're looking for. And
yeah, and they I don't I thought the first modern masters were good. Eternal Masters were a little bit poor, and then Iconic Masters was awful. Uh,
yeah,
and I don't know, like they should just be re-releasing the original Modern Masters. I feel like I'd be happier with that than
yeah,
anything
yeah.
else.
I I think it's been a slow there's been a slow decrease in value and quality in the master sets as they've been released, and hopefully this next one won't be a continuation of the pattern, but I'm guessing it probably will be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um.
So
Yeah.
do you want to like slowly move into some other topic and maybe
Yeah, let's go
wrap
on to
up
something
some?
else. I feel like we're just going to. I feel like I'm just ranting against Magic, which might. I'll just warn you, which might happen a few times. Because if we ever talk about Magic, I'm just gonna be like, because I love the game so much, and to see it
Yeah.
just be this awful, it hurts me. It really does. Because I want to go to my local game store and draft and have a good time, but I can't justify spending $15 on a draft on a set that has crappy cards in it,
Mm-hmm.
and the cards are damaged out of the packs. Like I can't. Like what am I supposed to? I can't. I can't justify that as a consumer. All right.
Right, right. Yes. So I agree with what Mike is saying here. If we come off like grumpy old men, that's not the case. We like Magic the Gathering. We've been playing it for a long time, and we want to see the game improve. But we are probably gonna I can guarantee we're gonna criticize the game nonstop until they kind of like change their ways.
You should just release your cube as a set. I'll draft that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean there are Magic is still fun, but the standard and the sets they're releasing now just aren't up to snuff. Are there any themes or ideas you want to like wrap up as we? Because I wanted to go back and just say the reason I brought up the double faced cards in Ixalan was that if you actually hold the Ixalan double faced cards up to a light, they like lack some sort of like inner layer to them where you can actually see the light go through the cards. But it looks
Oh
like
wow.
but it looks like they fixed them with Rivals of Ixalan because I have a double face card now, and the light does not go through it. So maybe they're slowly trying to correct the card quality issue. But I thought that was pretty interesting that those Magic cards had they were missing that layer of thin blue or black plastic that runs through the center of them.
Yeah, I'm not in the business, so I don't know how hard or easy it is to just be like, hey, can we just go back to the card stock we were using 5 years ago? Like, I don't like. Is it just Is that technology lost? Is it? I guess they might have. I've heard they have new contracts with different printers now.
Okay, all right,
So maybe the old card stock is just not available, but that doesn't mean there's not a better one you could be choosing. There's no way. Uh,
right,
but all right. Anyway, let's get on
yeah,
to something else because we talked about Magic enough.
Okay, so that was our magic.
You had a really interesting topic that you've heard about, and I would like you to introduce it because
Okay.
I want to play off that.
Okay. Yeah. Before we go into that, I just want to reiterate that I'm not well versed on any of this stuff. These are just my opinions and all that. So I'm going to make many mistakes, and please give us feedback on all these mistakes that we make, and we'll try to correct them. So the topic that I wanted to talk about was the difference in generations, like the Boomer generation, the Generation X, the Millennials, and then what I've been heard termed Generation Z, which comes after the Millennials. And the reason I've been thinking about that lately is because I was listening to some podcasts and they were talking about those different generations. And the thing I'd always heard about the Boomers, like the baby Boomers, was that they are the group of people that were born after the end of World War II when all the soldiers came home and had kids. And I know that not all baby boomers come from like some soldier returning from war, but from whatever that block of time is from like 1945 to probably into the late 50s, would you say?
Yeah, I would say like up to 1960.
So those, up to 1960. Those
honestly, I would consider like through 19, like to like 65, because like I would consider my parents boomers, and they were born like 62, 63.
Sure. Okay, so people born from that like maybe about 20-year period.
Because it's not just you have to remember, it's not just like the war thing. It's also just it was just an explosive economic period of like prosperity through the 50s and then into the 60s. So like people were richer than ever and could afford to have a lot of kids. So
yeah. So those people that are baby boomers are in they're either in retirement or they're within 10 or 15 years of retirement. Would you say that's probably like where they're at today?
Yeah.
Okay, so those are the boomers. My parents are boomers, and they have a certain way of like looking about the world, certain expectations for the country and the way life should be, and they just have a certain set of values. Generation X, how would you, since I kind of define the baby boomers, do you have a way you would define Generation X?
I always have a hard time defining Generation X. I would consider it people who grew up late 70s, 80s, I guess. Like they were probably born early 70s and then they experienced their teenage years in the 80s is what I would call Generation X, or at least like the people like maybe in like college age 80s, and then that's what I would consider them.
Yeah, I would think if I don't know,
Generation X it's hard for me to pin down just as like there's probably like if you Google what is the years of Generation X, that'll give you an answer.
But that's too high tech for us, so we're just gonna like freewheel it here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think some people that grew up in the 90s are part of Generation X in the way that they experience culture and that sort of thing. So I would say somewhere between like the late 70s and maybe like mid 90s is like Generation X.
Well, I would consider myself to be a millennial, and I was born in 90. I don't want to date myself, but early 90s. So I would consider millennial to start at like the early 90s, like born 90 through 98, I'll say, would be millennials almost. Maybe 98 is a little late, like 90 to 96. And that's what I would, or maybe like I would even include like late 80s, like 88 to 96. I would say would be millennials.
And what would you? Where do you think the cutoff? Like, where do you think millennials and then this Generation Z kind of meet?
I think the Generation Z are the people born like 98, 99, and then 2000 after. Like these are the people who are like just turning 18 now. Or almost turning 18, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's what I would consider them to be. So let's get into like the more like talking about the differences between them, because I feel like we're spending too much time just defining what these. Because I feel like most people know what Generation X and baby boomers are. Like I don't think it like unless you're like I don't know living under a rock or something. I don't want to insult the people listening, I guess. But I feel like most people know what a baby boomer is, what an X is, what a millennial is, and what the Generation Z is.
Right, so let me just say you can send all hate mail to GCAP podcast@gmail.com and we will promptly get to your hate mail.
Yes, GCAP podcast. Please send us all your criticisms and nudes. If you, no, I'm just kidding. I don't want any nudes. Now I'm going to get them all. But I don't want
So, okay, so yes, we got the Boomers, Generation X, Millennials, and Generation Z, and they all kind of like approach things differently. And I thought I kind of had, I always thought I was grouped into the Millennial generation, but when I heard these guys on this other podcast talking about Generation X, I thought, damn, there's like a lot of similarity. Like I feel myself thinking in many of the ways that they're describing these Generation X people. And it's kind of depressing. Well, I thought it was kind of depressing the way they described it. So the way they were describing Generation X was that they used High Fidelity and Grosse Pointe Blank, which are two films. I've only seen High Fidelity, but I didn't see it when I was younger. I saw it like maybe, I don't know, within 5 years ago. And like the movie is, and they also picked up the movie Clerks as an example of like Generation X, of like these kids who grow up in the suburbs, and their life is pretty easy, and they kind of seek this like life of leisure, and they don't want to get married, they don't want to have kids, they just want to like listen to music and play video games and just like have this like relaxing life. And a lot of their jobs aren't really that great. Like, not that they hate their job, they just never really aspired for much more than that. So like they are the type of people that are managers at like Blockbuster Video or something like that, if that was still around, like some type of like low level management job thing like that, or like in retail. And they're in their 30s, and they're like perfectly fine with this type of lifestyle. And I never heard them being like described like that, and I was wondering like why. I don't, is what I'm saying so far, does that kind of like ring true to you, Mike? Would you kind of associate Generation X with that?
I think that's what Generation X is. Like, they're not really interested in to me, well, I see Generation, like Clerks is what makes the most sense to me, is that to me it's like the Generation X movie, and that they just want to like they just want to talk about what they want to talk about, do what they want to do, but they don't have any like big aspirations, like they don't want to change the world or anything. They just want to they just want to chill, they don't want, they don't I guess to me, maybe I should say it more eloquently, they like the life of leisure is what I think is what they're after. Like they want a life without worry, not that they aspire to be rich. Like, it's not that they wouldn't want to be rich. It's that they aspire to, like, they're fine. Like, to me, a Generation X is a person who's fine living in a crappy apartment that is like, it's cheap, and is fine having a crappy job, but that's steady. So they can have their free time to go be with their friends, or listen to the music they want to listen to, or whatever. That's what I see Generation X as. The defining characteristic. I think it's important to say that not everyone born in these years adheres to these principles. It's
absolutely.
What we're saying it's kind of like an overarching theme, is that we see this in a lot of people from these generations. Like for example, like I would consider myself a millennial. I would define millennials as people who come into a world that is a great world, but they still see it as a place that needs to be changed, like drastically. And I don't see that myself. Like, I wouldn't consider myself this like want drastic change in the world, or at least drastic change from like the principles that the world is built on. Like I agree with like almost enlightenment and like the American conservative and libertarian perspectives is something I like a lot.
But most millennials probably don't, though, right?
But most millennials don't. Yeah, most millennials see, Thomas Jefferson as a slaveholding bigot, instead of like the awesome visionary he was about liberty that he was. You know what I mean? But that's another topic. That's kind of on topic, but it's different. But yeah, like what I really like about this topic is I think that baby boomers kind of set up the other generations for failure, almost.
Yes,
is how I see it.
Yes, I want to talk about that.
I love that reaction. Is that George is a great quote from George Carlin. Baby boomers were people that were given everything, right? They were given every opportunity and every thing in the world, and they just looked back at the people who birthed them, the people who fought World War II, the greatest generation that ever lived, and just said, "Meh, hell, like we just want our electric curlers and our they're they're just like they're more like not that I don't like consumerism. It's just like it's like a defining characteristic of baby boomers that they see just I don't know they see uh convenience as like oh, convenience means our society is just the best in the world. I'm like, no, your society is the best in the world because it's built on, you know, philosophy and hard work, you know, not just, you know, I don't know. What do you take on, like, what's the defining, what are the defining characteristics of baby boomers that you think kind of ruined it for other generations?
Well, I first of all, I agree with everything you just said. I don't know how I'm not familiar with the George Carlin routine, so I don't know how much of that's like word for word, but the overall,
it's like almost like that. It's if I remember correctly, he's just like baby boomers. I think the one thing I remember correctly is baby boomers were a generation that were given everything. But yes. I think he goes into like they're selfish. Is that like they're built on one principle of like, give me that, it's mine. That's what he says. Is just like, he's like, give me that, it's mine. Give me that, it's mine. And they get everything, and then they want to turn around and say to other people like, hey, you can't have things because of whatever. And he breaks it. He references drugs. He's just like, oh, you can't have cocaine, even though, you know, we were on whatever beforehand, you know, stuff like that. Like, he sees them as like old fogies, I guess, but I see them as worse than that. They're worse than old fogies. They're not as, like I said, I don't mean this as like to call out specific people. I just mean like the culture in general that's associated with them is like a culture of failure, really, is what I think it is.
Okay. Well, I think there's big problems with Generation X, and I think there's big problems with millennials. And I don't know enough about Generation Z to assess it properly. But the trend that I see, or that I've heard other people talk about, and then I like kind of observe it myself, because as I said, both of my parents are boomers. My aunts and uncles are. The guy I work with is a boomer, and we always talk about, like, you know, his life and his perspective on things. And what I get out of the boomers is that life was pretty good for them. They were given many things. They are like the last generation that it seems that gets to have these like work pensions and that type of stuff, like big cushy retirement funds. Our generation doesn't get that. They are the generation that gets to have like the house down in Florida to like visit in the wintertime, or like the beach house and that type of stuff. And our generation doesn't have that. They come from a very prosperous time. They were given money. They spent it on, again, leisure activities and that sort of thing. I mean, not that it's foolish, but that's what they spent it on. The generations following them didn't have that. I think culture, pop culture, entertainment sort of played a role in steering Generation X away from that, whether or not it was to Generation X's benefit. I think things like the movie Clerks and stuff like that, the grunge movement, alternative rock in the 90s, this kind of, and these are not my original ideas, but I agree with them. It's sort of like a form of existentialism. Like, I don't want this perfect suburban life. I don't want this like clean cut living lifestyle. And it's kind of like a rejection of prosperity, rejection of an idealized form of American values that the boomers had to some degree.
So I would just call it like they want to live a little dirty, you know?
Sure, yeah. And they don't want responsibility and that sort of thing. And that lifestyle is fun for a little while, but in the end, you kind of end up empty-handed, and you don't have much to show for it. I mean, if you have a crappy job, you don't have your own house, you're living in an apartment, you don't have a wife or kids or anything like that, and that can lead to I think a very sad existence as you approach your like late 40s, early 50s, and you kind of realize like, oh, the peak years of my life have passed me by, and I'm still living like I just got out of college. And I mean, I don't think everybody who lives like that is subject to that. I'm not trying to like criticize anybody for their lifestyle choices, but I think the greater culture did a disservice to Generation X in feeding them that type of information, like it's perfectly okay to live your life this way. And I think the millennials are also at a disadvantage for some of the things they've been told. Their world is a great world, especially the ones living in America and Europe. I mean, but so many of the SJWs, the social justice warriors that we will probably talk about many times on this podcast, a lot of them come from the millennial generation, and they seem like they're very unhappy with the world. And I just don't think they really know what the world could be. They're rather ungrateful, I would say.
Yeah, they're ungrateful. They don't understand. They don't get, like, you could just look at other places in the world and look at what the world could be if you didn't have the solid foundation of American exceptionalism. Really, is what it is.
Right.
And before that, it was
in America. You know, that's such a little thing, but it's a big deal. And,
yeah,
and they think that like women are like second class. Or just as an example, we've really hounded the women point a lot this show, but I think that's a topic a lot of people are talking about these days. We're not like women haters or anything like that.
Yeah, no, of course. Like it's so dumb to like even suggest that. You know, like I want everyone to be happy. Like I want everyone to pursue what they want to pursue as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I want everyone to say what they want to say, have their own opinion. Like I don't care what you do. I just, all I do is I make observations on the world around me, and what I see right now is I see a lot of women are very unhappy with their lives, especially in my generation. Like this culture in the millennial generation, especially the culture right now of just like women, it's like good to be a whore, you know? Right? Like I saw a meme on Facebook, like to me, and it perplexed me. Like you think it would disgust me, but really it just perplexed me about what goes into thinking about it, you know? And that like, oh, when your self-esteem is really low, so you do some whoring to make yourself feel better. I'm like, really? That made you feel better? That you just went and like slept around with some guys and you're just like, oh, now I feel good. Like, because I guess what's replaced, monogamy and children is just, hookup one night stands that like, oh, I feel wanted because a guy wanted me for one night, and
cats and French bulldogs.
Yeah, like
replace kids.
Exactly. Like I think it's like I don't have kids and I wish I did, but I feel like that's what's missing from a lot of people's lives is like they just
certainly a lot of people that act out.
Yeah, millennials. It's like if you just settle down with someone and have a kid, like it just changes your whole like from what I know I can't get it myself, but from what I think there's definitely something to it. Like when you have a kid, your whole perspective on the world changes because your world is no longer about yourself; it's about someone else, right?
I've heard that. I've heard that.
Like it doesn't matter what happens to you as long as the person you're taking care of is happy and taking care of. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't like, because most humans I feel are very selfish from birth, right? Like I think honestly,
survival instinct.
It's a survival instinct. Yes, it's a survival instinct. But once you have a child, that selfishness then takes a 180 and goes, instead of being selfish for you, you're selfish for them, right? Sure. And then you're more apt to worry about what happens in the future, right? Because I think that's a problem with Generation X is they don't see the future as a thing that they have to care about, right?
They're not invested in the future because they don't have as many offspring.
Kids. Exactly. Sure. If you don't have offspring, you're not invested in the future. You can say you are, but you're not.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And I think that's just I think that's the similarity between X and millennials is neither of them are having kids at the same rate as boomers.
Yeah, as the boomers.
And, And I think it's honestly a travesty because if we just, and I'm like when I say when I say these things, I don't mean all. I just mean most. I'm putting that out. I'm probably going to repeat that a lot. I don't mean all. I just mean most.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So biologically, most women are happier when they're in a monogamous relationship that has children, right?
Yes.
Where a man can go out and make the money or make the bread or whatever, like put food on the table, and she can take care of the home. Like for every year, you can, when they do the surveys of what is the happiest profession, for the last 60 years since they started doing the survey, the number one happiest profession is housewife. Every time.
Okay.
And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. Like,
dude, if I could be a housewife, I would be in a heartbeat.
I would love to be a housewife.
I mean, it's not easy, but it's got perks. It's got a lot of perks.
It's got a lot of perks, like spending time with your children. You understand? Like the thing is, like I guess what you don't understand is like, I guess you can kind of relate it to when you spent time with your parent. Like when you're a child, when you're a small child, nothing means more to you than being able to go and do something with dad or mom. Right. Like nothing means more to you. Like, yeah, when you get older, you want to go do stuff with friends instead. Like, oh, I don't want to hang out with. But when you're a small child, right? Like nothing meant more to you than like going to the one place that you and mom loved, or you like going to the ballpark with dad, or like just doing whatever, like that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like that. Like nothing meant more. Like nothing made you happier. Well, nothing made me happier, obviously, but I think that's a common thing for a lot of small children. Is because who else do you know in the world? You only know your mother and father, really, right? So like that's what makes you happy, and I think that is a good parallel to what a parent feels for their child. Like I don't think a parent feels any happier than when they're making their child happy. Like for example, like when I was a child, my dad had a pretty good job for a long time, and we had money until he got laid off, and then we didn't. But when he did have money, we took him. We had expensive vacation. We went to Disney World twice, all right? And you don't go to Disney World for you when you're an adult, right? You go for it's not a fun experience for an adult. It's a lot of waiting in line and sweating, right? But for kids, it means the world, right? Like for me, those are like the happiest memories were made at Disney World, you know, And I think that like people are undervalued. Like, and the thing is like you get satisfaction as a parent because of that. Like you get to know that like your child had like lifelong experiences. And I'm not just bring Disney World as an example, but just like anything. You know what I mean? And I think that's what goes into a happy profession of housewife mainly. Like there's a lot of other perks like oh, you get to stay at home and not have to worry about a boss and things like that. But I think that goes into it, but I think the main thing is the fact that you get to spend so much time with your children as opposed to not. Because like this generation, like we're having a generation raised in daycares, you know, which I think is a big problem. It's a big problem because I think it weakens the relationship between parent and child, and because of that weakens the entire society as a whole. Because the entire society from cavemen is built on the family relationship. For humans at least.
That would be an excellent topic for one of these segments in the future, talking about the evolution from gender roles, whereas like the man is primarily the worker and the woman is primarily the caregiver of the home, caregiver, and how morphing into the society where now both partners are in the workforce and the effect that has on the children and what caused that and why people are still doing that to this day, and that sort of thing. That would be an excellent topic, I think.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is like I don't want it discouraged, but I don't want the working lifestyle for a woman to be discouraged. That's not what I want. But I do want.
That's not what we're trying to do here now.
But what I would want is I would want our society as a whole to encourage the housewife one. And if you think that discourages working, I don't know. But the thing is like most women are happy that way, right?
Yes.
I want people to be happy. And I think that like when people are under the third wave feminist ideologues, right? When they listen to them, people are unhappy because I watched a documentary about it, or they talk about these. Oh God, I'll look it up for next time to share the name of the documentary. But it was about like the the women's movement in Britain in like the 70s and 80s, I think.
Okay. So they
And
all were going to work?
yeah, when they're all, well, not only are they all going to work, but they're all they are they talk about how like this is a big women's lib movement. Like they told, like there's just these stories about these women who had families. They were housewives who got infected by these people, and then they just left their husband and children to go do activism instead, right?
So useful
and then,
for the world.
Yeah, exactly. Well, not just useful for but the thing is like I don't want to focus on the world. The world's the big thing. I'm a big fan of Jordan Peterson, and I talk and he talks about like fixing yourself, right? Like clean your room before you want to go change the world, right? Like to me, it would be like take care of your family before you go and be an activist, right?
Sure.
And the fact that, like, to me, what hit me hardest the most is like, it almost made me a little emotional because I felt so bad for this woman, right? Because she'd been duped, basically, right? And she's this is now like 2016 or whatever, where it's like way after, like she's not an activist anymore. They're just interviewing her about the time, right? And she goes like, well, what do you think about feminism now? And she goes, well, I think it's very good for young women. Right?
Okay.
Before you get like, because there's not a lot for you once you're older, because once you're old, she realizes that's all you want is a family and like a home, right? And not like whatever fulfillment you're getting from this activism is not going to last, you know?
Sure.
And I think you can put that on any activism, really, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I don't want to focus on the whole women thing, but just anything. And I think it's like a problem with millennials these days is they're all looking to be activists when really they just need to get a job, clean their room, and find a relationship.
Sure. A lasting relationship or something that could at least lead to that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Those are great thoughts. Not a bad segment. Do you think maybe we should try to wrap things up? We are over the hour mark.
Okay, we're right over the hour mark. Okay, let's wrap things up. So I do want to get back to this generation thing. I think we just went off into like I think it kind of dumb. We went off into like the women thing, which I think will be probably a regular topic because it's a regular topic of the world today. It's like all they talk about. You know.
We will have focused shows in the future too. It's going to take us a couple shows for us to get our bearings. Yeah,
we're kind of ad-libbing here. We're doing very little preparation. So. Yeah. Show how much we're invested in this, but yeah. So anyway, I think it's a good thing of what you can expect. We talked about some geek stuff. We talked about Magic the Gathering and what the future of that is, not only on the philosophical side but the technical side of it. Yeah. And then we had our little conversation about generations and then what makes people happy.
Right.
Which I think
we are happy people, by the way.
Yeah, we're pretty. I mean. I could be happier, but I'm working on changing my life to actually be like you have to make your own happiness. No one's going to give it to you.
I agree with that. Yeah, I'm working on my happiness too, but in general, I'd say I'm a pretty happy person.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we'll go ahead and say that's our first podcast. I think it was a success. What do you think, RC?
Yes, I would agree with that, Mike.
All right.
I look forward to the next one.
All right, we'll see you guys on the next episode of the Geek Culture and Philosophy Podcast.
Take care.
Bye-bye.